Welcome to Scarlet Tavern. Grab a drink, take a seat, and let's begin. Tonight, we are diving into the shadowy corners of Hollywood's past. I'm your host Caleb alongside Ben. We are diving into the life and death of George Reeves, our very first Superman. With fame, fortune, and fanfare, what could possibly lead to this untimely demise? Was it the weight of the spotlight, personal demons, or something far more sinister lurking behind the camera? This is Scarlet Tavern, Mead, Murder, and More. Now, things may sound a little different because things are a little different.
You can say that again.
We are officially recording this live, face-to-face, no more online. We finally got Ben moved into my state, so we are officially live. And with that change, we decided to make a different change, and our new tagline, Mead, Murder, and More. We are big mead drinkers.
He had me at mead, honestly.
This is also a tavern, and yeah, I think it kind of sums everything up pretty easily.
Yeah.
Rolls off the tongue a little better than the old one, too.
Oh, yeah.
So, with that, a new logo is going to be coming out here soon. We'll put that on our normal socials. But, yeah, tonight we are getting into not Christopher Reeves.
No relation, believe it or not,
no
actually.
relation. George Reeves, the other Superman, the first Superman. But, yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
All right, today we are journeying back to the golden age of Hollywood, one of my favorite eras to read up on, to explore the life and the mysterious death of George Reeves, a man who was famous for his portrayal of Superman. The very first one is definitely the first live-action one. He left a very indelible mark on popular culture, from the lights of the silver screen to the shadows of real-life mysteries. Let's unveil the story of George Reeves. All right, George Reeves, excuse me, everybody. The mead's already going to my head. Was actually born George Kiefer Brewer. See, so no relation to Christopher Reeves, who was
born as a Reeves.
Who was an actual Reeves. When I found out, I was like, oh my god, his dad. It's like, they're not even related. Was born on January 5th, 1914 in Woolstock, Iowa. George's journey to Hollywood began actually really early. His mother moved to California with him shortly after his birth. It was in the sun-soaked avenues of Los Angeles that George would find his calling. Before he donned the iconic cape, he's had a pretty steady career of landing roles in various films, very bit roles and everything. His most notable one, notable pre-Superman role, was a minor part in a very classic film. Y'all may have heard of it. Gone with the Wind. He actually played, I believe, what did he play? He played Stuart Tarleton. It's been a while since I've seen that film, so I don't actually remember what that character was, but like I said, it was a minor role, but it was one that did get him his foot in the door, as it was for his role. But his role of Clark Kent or Superman that actually cemented his legacy in Hollywood. In the 1950s, the TV show Adventures of Superman that catapulted Reeves to national stardom. The show was a massive hit. Reeves became a household name. But along with this time, as he's getting his role as Superman, he also starts beginning a very torrid affair with the wife of a studio executive. With Tony Maddox, wife of Eddie Maddox. This was a notably older woman. They would carry on this affair for a few years actually. But then this is where things start going a little bit wrong for George in his personal life. He takes his number of years with Superman, but that's all he ever gets. He never gets any roles, and
he really got. And this was big, especially in the 50s. Was typecasting.
Mm-hmm.
We see it with Marilyn Monroe. She was always typecast as the blonde bimbo kind of thing.
John Wayne was always the rough and ready.
It's because he can't do anything else.
Well, yeah, I guess.
But he's in the 50s, typecasting was a big thing. And a man that looked like George Reeves, who looked like Superman.
Exactly.
He was Superman. It's just like the new one. Tyler Cochin.
Oh yeah,
he's the new one. He looks like Superman. He's fucking great.
Exactly, and George again, but like you said, George was a pretty big guy, very handsome looking. So the Hollywood studios back then were very, very jealous of having their people there. Judy Garland and Shirley Temple are great examples. They were the innocent little schoolgirl type people. Like they were just these. You never would ever, no studio would ever allow them to take a role that was, say, risque. Like, You're never going to see Shirley Temple play like a call girl.
Marilyn Monroe. You're never going to see her play Marilyn Monroe parts. Because that's what Marilyn Monroe was known for.
Exactly. She's always the ditzy blonde, the girl. Yeah, exactly.
Granted, she was also having an affair with multiple famous people, so.
John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, including JFK, but a few gangsters as well.
Yeah, exactly.
A few very well-known gangsters. We will do an episode on Marilyn Monroe at some point.
Yes, just to let everyone know
this
quick.
This is a series.
This is the beginning of our Hollywood murder mystery series. We'll be
with a break.
Next
week we're gonna
talk about the
Salem witch trials. A few specifics because of Halloween. When this comes out, it'll be just after. When the next episode comes out, it'll be just after Halloween. But after that, we're going to do our series of like Hollywood murders and deaths and stuff, which Maryland is going to be one of those. I believe we're going to do the OJ trials.
We're also going to be covering Bob Crane from Hogan's Heroes, William Desmond Taylor, probably one of the most mysterious deaths of Hollywood. But let's get back into George Reeves. So Reeves is, at this point, his career is very much in a plateau, or as some would probably say, stalling. He's trying to break away, or I believe at this point he's actually broken away from the role of Superman. He's trying to venture out into new venues, and they're just not coming. I think at one point he was offered a role as a professional wrestler for somewhere. It was very, very demeaning, I guess, in his eye, because he saw himself as a serious actor. But just as this is going on, most crimes and murders, this came out of nowhere. So on the night of June 16th, 1959, George Reeves met his end. George Reeves was found dead in his bedroom in his home in Benedict Canyon in Los Angeles. A gunshot wound to the head ended his life at just 45 years old. Almost immediately, this started sending shockwaves through Hollywood and amongst his fans, leaving the question, what happened? So one of the first persons on scene who was actually there, supposedly, if we're gonna get into it. One of the persons on scene was his fiance at the time, Lenore, Leonore. Caleb, am I pronouncing Lenore?
Leonore Lemon.
Leonore Lemon. Leonore Lemon was his fiance. She was a well-known New York socialite, bit of a rough. She was a wild one, basically. Let's put it that way. She was known to party really. I guess it was the old saying you could say the party really didn't start until she showed up.
So she was Kesha. The party don't start until I walk in.
Yeah, pretty much. So there was some party guests at the time. Lemon told the police that she was in the living room with the guests at the time of the shooting, but hearsay statements from another person, Fred Crane, Reeves' friend and colleague from Gone with the Wind, put Lemon either inside or in direct proximity to Reeves' bedroom. According to Crane, who was not present, mind you, at this incident, Bill Bliss, another guest at the party, had told Millicent Trent, after the shot rang out while Bliss was having a drink, that Lemon came down and said, quote, "Tell them I was down here. Tell them I was down here," in an excited state. This is where everybody, of course, went upstairs and they found George dead, bleeding on the floor. So immediately the police are called, and this is when the investigation part happened. And right here we're starting to get into some problems with the investigation of the LAPD. So Los Angeles police were on the scene very swiftly. Initial impressions led them to rule the death as a suicide. During interviews, they cited reasons like depression over his career and struggles with being typecast, like Caleb said, of being just the Man of Steel. But as often with Hollywood, beneath the surface of all the glitz and glamour, there's a lot more darker and complex currents and narratives to this. A number of questionable physical findings were reported by the investigators and others. There were no fingerprints on the gun. That's very interesting to me. How do you shoot yourself and somehow wipe the prints off a gun? It's obviously you don't.
Yeah.
And I very sincerely doubt that George Reeves set up his suicide to look like a murder.
No, if you are going to commit suicide, you're not going to plan it out to look like a murder.
I mean, suicides in front of people and amongst something like this isn't obviously uncommon. I've heard of it happening.
Back then, though, it wasn't common.
No. I mean, suicides happened all the time, but it does to me seem like a very odd choice. To just, like, you have your fiance over, no matter how tumultuous the relationship was reported to be, it's kind of an odd thing to just kill yourself while you're having a house party. To me, at least. I don't know how you feel.
There's also no gunpowder residue on his hands. If I'm shooting myself, you're going to find gunpowder residue on my hands.
I mean, so like according to what we've read, some sources contend that this wasn't a routine something performed, but this is George Reeves. Everybody knew who he was.
You're gonna do your due diligence.
If the Los Angeles Police Department in this period is going to do any due diligence, it's going to be with George Reeves, in my opinion, at least. Now, also, the bullet that killed Reeves was recovered from the ceiling. But, excuse me. The bullet that killed Reeves was recovered from the bedroom ceiling, and a spent shell casing was found under his body. 2 additional bullets were discovered embedded in the bedroom floor. All 3 bullets had been fired from a weapon found at Reeves' feet, though all witnesses agreed they only heard 1 shot, and there were no signs of forced entry or other physical evidence that a second person was in the room. Despite the unanswered questions, Reeves' death is officially ruled a suicide, based mostly on the witness statements. They say the physical evidence at the scenes and the autopsy report. See, to me, right now, this seems very rushed.
So, I'm trying to find it, but it would be hard. I'd have to dig through. I wonder if I can find his autopsy report.
I'm sure we would have to make probably have to make a request through the Los Angeles Police Department if we're... So, this is a very... This is a very rushed investigation. I'm sure the police were probably, yep, he's dead. Gun's there at the scene. There's a bullet in his head. He's dead. It was suicide. Everybody says that he was down on his luck from his career and his relationship, so he killed himself. Case closed. But, enter, folks, the first twist. Reeves' mother. Reeves' mother did not believe that her son was... At least, she didn't initially believe that her son's death was a suicide. She felt that He thought it was premature and just very presumptuous and too early to rule this death as a suicide. She actually retained a well-known attorney named Jerry Geisler to petition for a reinvestigation of the case as a possible homicide. The findings of a second autopsy that were performed, conducted at Geisler's request, were the same as the first, except for a series of bruises of unknown origins around the head and the body. A month later, having uncovered no evidence contradicting the official findings, Geisler announced that he was satisfied that the gunshot wound had been self-inflicted and withdrew. Now, many people besides the mother also didn't really feel that this was kosher, to use it to, I guess, the best term. Actors Alan Ladd and Gig Young. Gig? Is that his name?
Gig Young. Yeah.
Gig Young. That's a weird name. Names back then, folks. They were kind of out there. Were reportedly skeptical of the official determination. Reeves' friend, Rory Calhoun, told the reporter, no one in Hollywood believed the suicide story. In their book, Hollywood Kryptonite, Sam Kashner and Nancy Schoenberger made a case for the involvement, as we're going to go into a little bit deeper into this person also, of MGM Vice President and notorious fixer Eddie Maddox. Reeves had been having an affair with his wife Toni Maddox. Others suggested that Eddie Maddox, who was rumored to have, amongst other ties, to mafia ties, and had ordered Reeves was killed. Fun fact, Reeves has a connection to someone that we will also be covering. Maybe not in this series, but we are definitely covering. I know Caleb wants to cover it really bad. Maddox has a possible connection to a suspect in the Black Dahlia murders.
Yeah, we'll probably, after this series, probably hit Black Dahlia.
Oh, yeah. Black Dahlia is a category and a thing of its own and needs all the attention, not just something that we're part of a series, I feel.
Black Dahlia is going to probably be a 4-part series, at least.
Yeah, at least. So, with that, as far as Hollywood's concerned, the LAPD and the prosecutor's office is concerned, the book is closed.
So, we're going to go into some theories, but I will give you mine. I can see Eddie Maddox being a part of this. He was known to have a temper, a very bad one, and a man like that's really gonna let another man sleep with his wife and get away with it. It doesn't matter who you are. Mm-hmm. But as for, I don't believe it's suicide. You have no fingerprints, which means a glove was used or the gun was white. You have 3 bullet holes. You have one in the ceiling, which what I was looking at the autopsy was to see if they said where the shot was. I found the autopsy report.
Oh, okay. So what did the autopsy
report? It just says shot to the head. It doesn't. Back then they didn't. So like, if you look at an autopsy report now, there is a picture of like a body on the autopsy report, and basically all of that's marked like what's where, blah blah blah. They didn't do that back then. They just did shot to the head. But the only way it could have gone onto the ceiling, obviously, is if he shot like this. Mm-hmm. Went under his chin, shot up, or into the roof of his mouth, shot up. Typically, people don't shoot like that, especially with a smaller gun. They shoot into their temple. So he would have had to been laying down with the gun under him for it to go
up into the ceiling.
Nobody's going to shoot themselves like that.
And even if he had put the gun into his mouth and shot, that's a small it was said to have been a small
30 calibers.
So that caliber has got to still go through the top of the skull.
It would not have.
Yeah, at least not enough. I don't feel like, again, I'm not a ballistics expert, but I don't feel like a 30 caliber is going to go through my roof. Again, we don't know the dimensions of the home or anything because the home doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like that there wouldn't be enough of a bullet to leave an identifiable bullet hole in the roof if it came through your skull.
Plus, you have 2 more in the ground. Guests are saying they only heard 1 shot, but everybody was drunk. They did a blood alcohol test on George Reeves. It was a .27.
Oh, he was.
So he was hammered. He was also this is the other thing is he was also known to play with empty guns, unloaded guns. But his fingerprints would have been all over it. It's his gun. Why was there no fingerprints on it?
Exactly.
You go wipe my gun. You go fingerprint my gun right now. My prints are all over it.
I can't imagine somebody at the scene, like his guest, his fiance,
wiping it,
unless they had something to do with it.
So, maybe the other option is maybe his fiance found out about the Tony Maddox, and she killed him because of it.
And that is one theory we are going to actually dive into, because there are a number of theories as to what happened to George Reeves.
I can from what I've read and what I know, I can pretty definitively say it's not suicide.
If this is
I wish somebody would reopen the case.
Exactly. I mean, if this is suicide, this is probably, and I use this term not in the way it's meant, I say it, this is probably the luckiest suicide ever, because if he's twice the legal limit, .27 you said?
He's triple the legal limit.
Yeah, triple the legal limit. He's able to kill himself, and that alone is enough there. And he's able to kill himself, and somehow the physical. I don't know how. I really feel like the pressure was brought on by, and I'll hold my theory to the end once we go through the other theories. But I feel I can, even just looking through the notes that we were typing of, I can almost tell the detective on this case is feeling the pressure from the top to be like, wrap it up, wrap this up. So, as we said, not everybody believed that this was a murder. Many people over the years have had theories as to what happened, what they did. Now, one of the theories, as you said, was suicide. George was reported to be unhappy with how his career was going, and he felt trapped with the Superman image. So, as it says, in a fit of despair, probably fueled by alcohol, based on that report, he may have just taken the gun and been like, "I'm done," and he killed himself. Contemporary news articles at the time, Lemon attributed Reeves' alleged suicide to depression caused by his failed career, quote from her, and inability to find more work. The report made by the LAPD states Reeves was depressed because he couldn't get the sort of part he wanted. Newspapers and wire service reports quoted LAPD Sergeant V.A. Peterson as saying, "Miss Lemon blurted, he's probably going to go shoot himself. A noise was heard upstairs," she continued. "He's opening the drawer to get the gun. A shot was heard. See there? I told you so." So, this probably was probably led the LAPD to initially thinking that George Reeves had killed himself. As Caleb said, there is some very glaring flaws with this theory, and it's mostly based on the physical evidence part. You know, the prints of there's no gunshot residue. There's no prints on the gun. So, I mean, right there, it kind of torpedoes the whole suicide theories, because how does a dead man clean himself up and wipe his gun clean when he's already dead?
Yeah.
So, now this goes on to another thing, as some people have delved into George Reeves' personal, very sordid life. What they call the love triangle theory. This is where it thickens. Some people around in Hollywood whispered of a tumultuous love triangle between Reeves, his fiancée Lemon, and his former lover, Tony Maddox. So another theory could be that jealousy and rage had led to it. What came to light during the independent investigation was the presence of 2 bullet holes in the floor, like we said. How'd they get there? Lemon's explanation was that she was playing with the gun on another occasion several days earlier, and it discharged.
And I would call her a liar right there.
Yeah.
Because your fingerprints aren't on the gun.
There's no
fingerprints on the gun.
Exactly.
There was never any reports of shots fired. There was nothing. So why? And you would have been able to see an old bullet hole versus a new one.
So Now, when questioned the LAPD, she stuck to her story of he killed himself because of this. Now, unfortunately, we only have this is the only narrative that was ever copied down. According to Lemon, there were Carol von Ronkel, William Bliss, and Robert Condon were also there who were also there at the time of death.
For those that are older that are listening to us,
I have no idea.
This is way before our time, so you guys probably know we don't.
I have no idea who these people are, and Caleb will tell you I love the older movies, and I don't even know who these people are.
I have no idea who these people are.
So, some people have suggested that Lemon may have actually been the perpetrator. They have suggested that Reeves and Lemon's relationship was quite volatile, and they were often seen arguing in public. As I said before, her reputation in the New York City nightclub scene was she was known as a hellraiser, dated back to the 1940s. Some people have concluded that she and Reeves could have been arguing in the bedroom that night. He was shot. She shoots him. She could have been holding the gun and made a discharge as they struggled for possession of it. This could possibly explain the bullet holes in the floor and possibly in the ceiling. In addition to to the fatal wound in his head, plus also the bullet, like I said, bullet hole in the ceiling. I feel like this could be a very plausible one because, again, George Reeves is not a small man. He is a big person.
So she holds the gun. He's wrestling with her. Bang, bang onto the floor. He lifts the gun up, bang into the air, and then she is somehow able to get it into his head and bang.
Exactly. Again, as Caleb said, this is a party going on.
He's also drunk.
He's drunk. She's probably drunk. I can't imagine she's sober.
They would never have. I'm sure she was. They never would have tested them. The only reason they tested him is because of the suicide
and the autopsy, because that's standard thing to do a toxicology of there. So another thing that cast suspicions on her was that the day after Reeves died, she left California. She never came back. I believe she moved to New York, and she never explained why she waited so long after the death to call the police, because Reeves was dead for, I never really found out how long he was dead for, but it wasn't like, bang, oh my god, George is dead, call the police. It was some time before there. So there is a time gap between when the first responding officer shows up to when they actually discovered him dead. Probably more than, if it is a murder, probably more enough time for Lenore. I'm calling it Lemon. Leonore. God, why can't they just call her Lenore? So much easier. Leonore to wipe the scene clean. Assuming she also may have been, like you said, there's other guests at this party. We don't know the dynamics of the whole relationship. So, let's see. Sorry, excuse me, folks. So, as you said, she left and she never returned. And none of the other guests have ever provided public testimony as to why they waited before calling the police. Giving credence to the theory that Lemon and another person might have been involved was the angle of which the shot appeared to have been fired. The bullet hole was following the ceiling above the bed. How would it have gotten there if Reeves had fired the fatal shot himself while his head was lying down? It's kind of like I said. Did he put his head under? If he was gonna kill himself while laying down, I would imagine he would have done it like this.
Yeah.
Where he doesn't have to kind of like maneuver his hand under his head that's under a pillow.
Plus, the gun was also found at his feet.
Exactly.
It would not have gone there if he was laying down and shooting himself.
Another theory, equally plausible, infers that Toni Maddox, the other woman in this situation, in many ways, Toni was the first woman because he had a relationship with her before Lemon came on the scene.
Yeah.
Toni might have been responsible, though not directly. She was known to be hurt, bitter, and angry over the breakup of their affair, because this had gone on for quite some time. I believe quite a few years, really.
And she is actually older than him. She's 8 years older.
Exactly. Particularly, also, Reeves and Lemon were living in a house that Maddox had bought for Reeves.
Yeah.
That's a slap in the face right there. Holy crap. Lemon told investigators after the reset that Tony was harassing him with phone calls for months, so much so that he had to sought legal advice of how to deal with her. Consequently, Tony might have hired somebody to kill him because her husband... Now, this also goes into her husband because he was reportedly to have mob ties.
Yeah.
Had this been the case, it's possible Lemon and the other guests that night might have been threatened with a similar fate if they had said anything. Understand this, Golden Age of Hollywood was very much, even to this day really, if we're really honest with ourselves, Hollywood has always been kind of a law unto itself. They deal with their things in-house. Very much, in this time, very much so. This is the height of the studio power. However, there is some doubt to this theory. So, Tony continued to worship Reeves even after they broke up and after his death. For years afterwards, until she was stricken with Alzheimer's disease, Tony sought to perpetuate his memory in any way that she could. After her husband's death in 1963, Tony was left wealthy and she lived very comfortably till she died in 1983. So, now, another also little hole with this is that this is for the Lemon side. Despite his, he still remained with Lemon after everything that happened. So it is possible that despite the relationship, there wasn't anything. Although, very interestingly, it is possible Reeves still felt something for Tony because he left his entire estate to her in his will and named no one else as the beneficiary. After the reading of the will, Leonore was quoted as saying bitterly, "Tony got a house for charity and I got a broken heart," referring to the charities for which both she and Reeves worked tirelessly for. So that is one theory. Caleb, how do you feel about that theory?
I don't think Tony had anything to do with it. I think Leonore possibly. I don't think Tony did because I know who Toni Mannix is. She's famous, very famous.
Mm-hmm. In her own right, she
was a very good actress. She did quite a bit of stuff. She was a philanthropist. All of that. Now, sex scandals and everything were huge in the golden age of Hollywood. So everybody was involved in one. Obviously, we had the President of the United fucking States that was involved in a sex scandal.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't see her doing this. I see more Leonore doing this because she probably felt the entire time that George still loved Tony, and the only reason that they weren't together anymore is because, well, one of the reasons would have been the affair became public, which was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
She is the wife of the executive of the largest business in Hollywood, the MGM.
Mm-hmm.
How's he supposed to get work? He's trying to get new work. There's no way that Eddie's going to hire him.
Everyone would be afraid to cross Eddie Maddox. Nobody would do it.
So he probably still loved Tony, but knew that unless Tony left Eddie, which she never would, because he was also an abuser as well, because his first wife left him after him beating her.
I believe also she died. She died under some mysterious circumstance. I gotta look that up, but I believe I heard something somewhere that his first wife died under some fairly mysterious circumstances that they just ruled like, yep, it was this accidental death.
So he cheated on his first wife multiple times, but they were very devout Catholics. So back then,
there was no
divorce was no option.
No.
She finally filed for it after he beat her half to death. And because, of course, that is the one outlying rule of divorce in Christianity, Catholicism is you're able to divorce to leave a situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I think two things: either it was Leonore, or it's what we are going to get into now, and it's Eddie Mannix.
Yes. So as we've been saying throughout this, Eddie Mannix is a very notorious figure, mostly behind the scenes. Really, big fixer. So nominally, Eddie Mannix was an executive at MGM, but realistically, he did. If somebody in Hollywood needed something gone, you need suddenly pregnant, up-and-coming starlet needs to not be that. Some 2-bit mobsters smacking around a leading lady, or Judy Garland needs some more uppers or downers. Eddie Mannix is the guy. It doesn't matter who you work for. Eddie's your guy to go make the problem go away.
And for those that don't know, that's exactly what a fixer is. A fixer still
exists still
very much to this day.
They're just
a lot more quiet about it.
Exactly.
Some of them. But a fixer was exactly that. If you were in Hollywood, if you were someone in the limelight, you would use a fixer to get rid of your problems. Were you a president that had an affair, or somebody, or a judge that slept with a prostitute? Well, that prostitute's going to suddenly become very quiet or disappear.
Yeah, one way or the other.
And so fixers were very dangerous people to cross. Because
exactly.
They were very well connected, and in the case of not all of them, now not all fixers are mob tied and all of that.
Eddie Mannix was just the more notorious.
More commonly now, most fixers are ex-military.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're usually SEALs, Rangers, guys that are trained to get in and out without being seen, fix stuff. Like your fixers are highly trained. Back then, they were more well-known for mob, especially Eddie Mannix.
So, just to better understand this theory, let's take a quick look at who Eddie Mannix is. So, he was born Joseph Edgar Allen John Mannix in 1891 in New Jersey. Mannix began his career in the carnival world, later shifting to the... Fucking carnies, man. Shifting to the film industry, where he quickly climbed the ranks. By the 1930s, he was a key figure at this little-known studio known as Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer MGM. One of the most prestigious and still prestigious film studios of its time in our time.
And I will admit, as bad as he was, he brought MGM.
Probably half the movies. He
is the reason MGM is still a big thing.
Probably just because of what he did to make sure all the problems went away.
Exactly.
Now, Mannix's official title at MGM was general manager, but many people who knew him as the studio's chief problem solver, or the fixer. It was his job to keep the studio stars in line and their reputations intact. This meant dealing with all the sordid scandals and all the less reputable people that could tarnish an actor's images or studio's reputation. So here's just a brief overview of some of the scandals that he supposedly fixed. And you may not have heard of them, and that's probably. And if Eddie Mannix was around,
he did a good job.
He did his job. So Jean Harlow, he covered up. Supposedly, Jean Harlow was a massive star in the 1930s, and supposedly her husband, Paul Byrne, died of an apparent gunshot wound. Rumors were that Jean killed him, but it was always rumored that Mannix had covered up the true nature of his death to protect Harlow's image, because Harlow is at this point, she is a big leading star. This is like Meryl Streep going to jail at the height of her career in the 80s and 90s. It's just, no, we're not doing that. Here's one that I didn't even know apparently happened.
I knew this.
I didn't even know this. Clark Gable's car accident.
So, for those that don't know, Clark Gable, the star of
Gone with the Wind?
Gone with the Wind, yes.
Amongst other films. He did a bunch of them.
Obviously, Clark Gable was the biggest moniker on Gone with the Wind.
He was the biggest Hollywood actor.
And which is why this happened.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Also, quick fun fact: this was Hitler's favorite actor.
Yeah.
Clark Gable's car accident. Hollywood legend Clark Gable allegedly struck and killed a pedestrian in a car accident. It is believed that Maddox used his connections to ensure the incident was swept under the rug, even placing blame on somebody else.
Because Clark Gable would have been done.
Oh, yeah.
MGM would have lost its biggest star.
I mean, geez, good God. I can't
We
even...
would have lost...
How do you, how do you have Hollywood without Clark Gable?
Well, I don't know what... Even when this was, this may have been before Gone with the Wind.
And
we never would have had that famous line.
Yeah.
In Gone with the Wind, because he ad-libbed that line.
Exactly. Patricia Douglas incident, and this is one of Hollywood's darker episodes. Patricia Douglas claimed she was assaulted at an MGM party in 1937. Maddox and the MGM machine allegedly went into overdrive to discredit her and buried the story.
He would have done very well working for the Scientologists.
Yeah.
Scientologists need somebody like him.
So Maddox was very well connected as his job as a fixer and as executive. So he knew and had personal ties with many of the Hollywood press and everybody who's the influencers of Hollywood at the time. So his methods weren't just limited to manipulating the press. He was rumored to have ties to the mob, which many believe he used to his advantage when fixing with certain delicate situations. Now, this is the theory being here. I went on this track to understand so that George Reeves and Tony Maddox are having an affair. Now, many people have said that George, Tony, Eddie, and his mistress, Eddie had a mistress. She was a Japanese girl mistress.
Sure, it's not his only one.
Sure, exactly. Believe that Eddie and Tony had an open relationship where Tony was free to do basically whatever, and Eddie was allowed to do whatever. However, what Caleb has said is that also Tony is not someone you cross. So the breakup between George and Tony.
Eddie's not somebody you cross.
Oh, Eddie, you're right. Sorry, excuse me, everybody. Eddie's not someone you cross. You hurt someone Eddie loves, and he loved Tony. He loved his wife.
He just couldn't keep it in his pants.
Exactly. So, but the relationship and how between George and Tony ended. George dumped Tony. Like, he broke it off. He didn't want to deal with her. Yeah. He probably felt that she was stifling his career, and he wanted to go off in this whole new direction. So he left Tony high and dry, left her very devastated. And as much as Tony probably didn't care, or if Eddie probably didn't care that George was screwing his wife, he did care that he hurt her.
Yeah.
So this is where the theory, most of the foundation of the theory is based on, is that, yeah, he may not have been upset about the affair, but he was upset with how the breakup and how George made Tony feel, and this led to George being killed by possibly a professional killer.
Yeah.
And with Eddie's influence over the police and all government officials in Los Angeles, because, let's face it, Los Angeles does not really exist without Hollywood.
Nope.
Especially back then.
Yeah.
So, this is where the theory of Eddie Maddox killing George Reeves comes to.
It makes me want to play L.A. Noire.
I love that game.
It's the same era.
I love that game. I beat that game. I have that game. We have that. We can play it now. Now that I live here in the same house as Caleb, we can all play it and solve mysteries in the noir era of Los Angeles. My favorite era. But really, this is where the story of George Reeves kind of ends. Eddie Maddox would go on for a few more years, doing whatever. Dealing with the dark underbelly of Hollywood before his death. Tony would live on to the 1980s.
She unfortunately suffered with Alzheimer's. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and then eventually died from that.
Exactly.
And she died from old age.
Yeah,
she was 80.
Yeah. But as in show business, they say the show must go on, and really and it's sad, really, that everyone kind of forgot about George Reeves and his mark on Hollywood.
Although, fun fact, I'm a big fan of like the Flash and Arrow and all of that. So the Flash, they did in the Flash movie with Ezra Miller. He did the multiverse stuff.
Oh yeah,
and so we got to see Christopher Reeves Superman.
Oh,
you got to see Adam West Batman. Well, there was a flash in the timeline of a black and white Superman.
Oh.
And everybody slowed down, and it looks like they used an image of George Reeves Superman.
That's nice. I like that. I'm not a fan of Ezra Miller, so I never really wanted to see the Flash. Yeah, I don't like Ezra Miller.
But yeah, they did all of that because they brought in Grant Gustin, who plays the Flash on TV. Better Flash, in my opinion. They brought him in for it. Again, Adam West. They brought in every single Batman that has ever played. They kind of did all this, but Christopher Reeves, there was a still image of him standing in his Superman pose in black and white. And it spun up a lot of stereotype controversies, the cast typing stuff. But it was a kind of a nod to all of the Superman stuff. So,
and it's good that we still even a little bit remember George Reeves, because really, honestly, it's kind of a sad tale of Hollywood. You know, you have a man who was really never really got to come into his own as an artist.
Well, it happens a lot. You get younger Amy Winehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Great, amazing musician. Unfortunately, her
own demons kind of... She never really wanted to solve those problems.
Same thing. Actually, we were just talking about him. Lead singer of Nirvana.
Oh, Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain. Course, killed himself, all of that. We were just talking about it because his daughter just married the son of Tony Hawk.
It's like
the clash of the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s royalty all had a royal wedding.
But yeah, so you see it a lot. They're unfortunately like one of my favorite actors of all time, Heath Ledger. All of these actors dying young. Unfortunately, they go on and people will... unfortunately, in 20 years, nobody will remember Heath Ledger.
That's sad, too. That's
really
sad.
We will.
Because we grew up with him.
But most people won't remember Heath Ledger. They won't remember they won't remember Kurt Cobain. Most people just wear a Nirvana t-shirt and have no idea who Nirvana actually is.
Or what it stood for.
So that it's the sad reality, but it's Hollywood.
Exactly. So, as I said before, I kind of wanted to hold my opinion on my theory of this till all the other theories came in. I believe George was murdered. Very 100%. Now, I lean toward the more simple one. Could Eddie Maddox have done this, and that? It's very possible. But I also believe that we got to look at the physical. What happened in the scene? You've got George Reeves with his fiancée, who he has a very, let's put it, complicated relationship with. Everybody's drunk. George goes up to maybe go to his room to just sulk or contemplate his life and what's going on at that point, which frankly wasn't going very well, at least not in his eyes. Leonore comes in, possibly berates him. Maybe he has the gun in his hand already. Maybe he is actually contemplating suicide. Yeah. Leonore comes in, she mocks and scolds him. He tells her, get away from me. She tries to, again, she was known to be a hellraiser at the club. Maybe she also had one too many, and then she starts to grab the gun, and then they struggle. Everybody downstairs is probably drunk, or just maybe they're outside. Maybe they're just not paying attention. Or, better yet, maybe they did hear multiple guns. Think about it. These aren't trained. We're not like us. We were formerly trained on how to respond to a gun. These are all possibly, actors and TV people.
A-list and B-list actors.
Exactly. So They hear a gun. They don't know what the hell is that. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, shit. They go up and see what's going on.
Yeah.
George and Leonore have had a struggle where in some point, somehow, George is shot and killed. Leonore is like, what's going on? What happened? What have I done? And then they all and then they all everybody has been drinking. Stupid things are being said like, are we in trouble? What do we do? Everybody
covers it up.
Wipe the gun.
Yep.
They wipe. Maybe somebody thinks to wipe George down for gunshot residue.
Yeah.
Maybe it's possible the LAPD simply just didn't test for it. It is possible, like you said. I don't.
LAPD has never messed up before.
I know, right? Never. As we'll see, they often do.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't all been fired. But I believe that is. It's fun and exciting to think that Eddie Maddox, the dark boogeyman who makes all of the evils and bad things in Hollywood go away to keep the gilded image of Tinseltown going, but it's more likely that
it was a struggle over a gun.
George died.
Accident.
George died.
Yeah.
And nobody knew how to deal with the situation. So that's how I think. That's what I think. Because, like I said, guilty people don't run. Yeah. We all know that. Guilty people don't run.
And she left the day after.
And she never came back. So that and this isn't the day and age, everybody, that,
we can just track somebody down.
Or just make a simple call on the cell phone and they can talk to them across the country. Once you leave a state, you're gone. You're done. Yeah. Unless they know, and
she wasn't a huge name.
No, she was more. She was a club girl. That's what she was. She was an A-list partier, so she was with Hollywood stars and everything. This is also what I believe also led to a lot of the struggle, because Leonore probably saw George Reeves and thought, "Ooh, I'm gonna grab Superman. Yeah. I got Superman," and then you realize, oh, he sucks. Yeah. He's not going anywhere. Now I'm stuck with him.
Yeah,
son of a bitch. So,
and he probably left everything to me in his will.
Yeah, right. So that is the life and death of George Reeves. Somebody who had a very brief but very much indelible mark on Hollywood, and we are left asking ourselves, what happened? Was it murder? Was it suicide? Was it an accidental death that just got covered up? Or were there some darker motives behind it? But please stick with us as we continue down this little rabbit hole, as we continue looking into the darker aspects of Hollywood. As I said before, I'm Ben.
And I'm Caleb, and we would like to thank you for visiting the Scarlet Tavern. Remember to turn in your glasses, push in your seats, and as always, tip the bard. Good night, everybody.
Good night.